Hello and welcome to Straw Hat Social Club. I'm Todd. I'm your anime expert, which is completely made up and doesn't mean anything. Joined by my wife Becca, as usual.
Hi.
Who I guess is more new to the genre than I am, but she's still got plenty of experience watching stuff back in the day. And on that note, so this is a side piece, the side,
Peace.
yeah,
Do
our,
that
our,
again.
our kind of side podcast here where we talk about stuff that's not One Piece. And we decided to start out with movies that were very influential for us when we were younger. So this week we picked Spirited Away because I think, well, why don't you explain what is your history with Spirited Away?
So, I first saw Spirited Away in 7th grade, and it was because my teacher wanted us to learn about animation.
Mm-hmm.
So, she chose that film, and I immediately fell in love with it.
I am kind of jealous because, you're a little bit younger than me and you definitely had access to some pretty fantastic stuff.
Well, I had fantastic art teachers.
Yeah, that too.
Like, they really cared about cultivating, like, an artistic experience.
Yeah, I guess what I mean is 'cause there's plenty of incredible animation from when I was a kid, but I think especially with the Miyazaki movies and especially with Spirited Away, which we'll get to some of the why this movie is so meaningful in America in a minute, but I think this is when anime started to be more recognized on like a mainstream level in America.
It was definitely the beginning of it.
Oh, for sure. And when I was in school, I know that anime was kind of looked down upon and wasn't seen as like real art. And I definitely think stuff like Spirited Away started to change that perception. So for me, I guess what I'll say as far as my history, it's a little interesting because it came out in 2001. So I was 16 at the time. I saw it in theaters. And what I came off
Wait,
of,
you got to see it in theaters?
I did see it in theaters.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
See, I saw it in a small classroom on a tiny TV.
Well, see, I was a little bit more of a weeb than you at the time. And the thing for me is that, so I'd seen Princess Mononoke, and that movie to this day is in my top 3 favorite movies of all time. I love that movie. And I would guess Spirited Away is you probably view it that same way.
Easily.
Yeah. So, so the funny thing for me though is going into this, Princess Mononoke is this epic adventure movie, with lots of action. You definitely see the appeal if you're a young man watching that. It's more geared toward that, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But Spirited Away, meanwhile, this movie was definitely tailored more toward young girls, which is another thing I want to get into once we get into the story. But for me, watching it the first time, coming off of Princess Mononoke, I actually remember when I saw it in theaters, I was pretty disappointed in it. Like I wasn't super into it.
Is it because there wasn't enough action?
No, I don't know. It's like, I don't want to say that because I feel like I appreciated a wide range of stuff, but it's a very different movie from Princess Mononoke. And I think leading into it, I was super, super hyped, after that, like seeing the trailers and everything, I was so excited. And it's a very different movie with a very different mood. And I think maybe I just wasn't in the right space for that. But I can say every time I saw it after that initial viewing in theaters, I've loved it. And watching it again last night, I love this movie top to bottom. Like, it's great.
Yeah, me too. And I think we're going to cover all the bases on why it's so great.
Yeah. But I did want to say one of the big things about this, going back to what I was saying about this being when anime started really being more accepted in America on the mainstream, this was the first anime movie to be nominated for and win an Academy Award. it won Best Animated Feature. And so that should tell you a lot about how this movie was perceived in America. And it was the highest grossing film in Japanese history. And
Really?
yes, and the only thing that beat it was the Demon Slayer movie Mugen Train,
Oh, yeah. Well,
which yeah, Demon Slayer was just such a like huge breakthrough hit in Japan
we can get into
and America.
hopefully, yeah, hopefully we can get into Demon Slayer one day because I also love that a lot.
Yeah. But it is funny that that's the one to beat it because I can remember when Mugen Train came out reading about like how massive it was in Japan and how it broke all these records. And so finding out that the record it broke was previously held by Spirited Away was kind of interesting. But yeah, so we'll break this down. First, we're going to talk about the art and the animation. Then we're going to talk about the story, and then we're going to give some just overall thoughts. So why don't we get to the art and animation? So when I was doing a little bit of research, something I discovered that I think you will think is really interesting, if you didn't know this already, is that Miyazaki, he doesn't write scripts for his movies. He actually just goes straight to storyboarding.
I love that, honestly.
Yeah.
I really as an artist who struggles when it comes to like scripting,
Yeah.
it actually makes more sense that it would be a storyboard first.
Yeah, you can
Film.
see for someone who's like, he's considered like an auteur, it does make sense that he would sit down and draw it out as his process. And what he said is that like he doesn't really even have a full story when he gets into it. He kind of the story finds itself as he's doing the storyboarding, which is pretty brilliant. It shows how much of a genius that he is, which I don't need to say because I think everyone kind of recognizes that at this point, you know, with his breadth of work. But I did think Spirited Away, what's so interesting, this does seem to be kind of like a it's kind of like the pinnacle of his career almost in some ways
Oh, most definitely.
because after Princess Mononoke, apparently he was actually thinking about retiring. And I guess we'll get into this when we talk about the story, why he decided to make this movie. But I will say, like, you can tell the budget that went into this movie is so like astronomical, and it shows his success that he's gotten to this point where he can command this massive budget, this huge animation team, and the movie just looks expensive.
Well, yeah, they were doing things, at least I would like to think in 2001, that people weren't really doing in animation.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe not even today. Like, I think they're just starting to catch up today.
Yeah, that is one thing that was really interesting is this movie, it uses 3D animation alongside the 2D, which is something that's always a little controversial because, you know, the 3D stuff can wind up standing out and looking kind of cheap and weird compared to the 2D. But with this had to be one of the early instances of them doing that, and they integrated it so well. Like you can tell with somebody like Miyazaki behind it, he's not going to look at something that's halfway done and say that's good enough. Like he pushed it and pushed it and pushed it until everything just blends seamlessly and it looks incredible and has a very distinct look to it that, like I said, looks very expensive.
Well, going off more art style things, this film is what really introduced me to atmospheric perspective
Yeah.
and the way that they use atmospheric perspective so beautifully in a way that you really, when people are painting landscapes, it's probably the most important thing to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you don't see it pushed so beautifully.
It definitely it has a really striking look 'cause it's very colorful and it has this kind of cozy atmosphere to it, which was one of the things that I wanted to hit on is like the bathhouse itself. It makes me I wish that I could go to that style of like Japanese bathhouse because it just there's something about how cozy it is and there's people like running around hustling bustling and they seem to be kind of all purpose. Like they feed you, they give you these baths and these these hot tub soaks and everything. And obviously that's something we don't do in America, but this movie really captures, like I said, this coziness and this warmth. And I think that's one of the things when I first saw it. I love the time you spend in the bathhouse with all the characters and all the weird stuff going on. And I think it started to kind of lose me when they left the bathhouse. Um, and that's not a criticism. That's just what I remember from my first impressions. But we'll get to that with the story.
So, since we are talking about the bathhouse, there's since they were told that this was a bathhouse for spirits, they felt like they were going to have to make up this place that really captured that feel. And first of all, I think they did a really good job.
Oh, yeah.
But also, they did that by just mixing different architecture together to like almost like Lego build this place
Yeah, it's
for
interesting.
spirits.
I mean, it has a very distinct look, and it almost has a kind of I don't know what word to use, but it's kind of like the way it looks on the outside doesn't match the inside. Like the inside space is just so huge and vast and sprawling. It's almost like an optical illusion, and it does feel like it just contains this magnitude of different spaces to accommodate like any guests.
Yeah, and the whole area itself has its own personality because obviously by day it's just an abandoned area,
Yeah.
almost seeming with no life. And then at night it just literally lights up and the river fills and everything and it becomes a whole
Yeah.
new area.
And the way that looks with the lighting and stuff as the sun went down is like, it's so cool.
Yeah.
I love how the village like gets filled with all the like little spirits and stuff.
Yes, I know. The way they just like seemingly just like float in to the space.
It's just, I've said it before, but it's cozy, it's warm. It really captures that in a way that I don't think I've ever seen in any kind of animated feature. And
Yeah,
it's great.
this film has probably always been like a comfort film for me too.
Oh yeah,
So
I can see that.
yeah, if I'm really not having it and it's just not a good day, I will just like put this on sometimes.
And like all the different characters, like all the different spirits and stuff have all these weird designs, like that big radish guy. And,
Yeah. And
like,
the huge ducks with leaf hats.
yeah, there's so many cool little things. And you know that they're super drawn from, Japanese mythology and everything, which was another thing I was reading about that was funny. There were a lot of little anecdotes about how when they were making this, they would reference things because this was like toward the end of Miyazaki's career. And they would reference stuff that the younger generations who were doing the animations and stuff, the kind of up and coming people would just be lost by these references. And Miyazaki would be like, oh God, our culture is dying. Like what's happening? But it is nice seeing that he was able to draw from so much from his history of making these animated features. And he definitely is very steeped in the culture over there. And he puts that into all of his movies, and it's part of what gives them personality and makes them so striking and so interesting. And of course, also the cool food, because
I know.
Miyazaki movies have great looking food.
Yeah, Studio Ghibli just knows what they're doing with food.
Oh yeah.
It's drawn in a way that I don't think anyone can really draw food.
Yeah. I mean, things like the little hens that they bite into and the bones are sticking out and stuff. It's like everything just looks so delicious. It's great. But the funny thing is, I mentioned this last night. The flip side to that is this movie can be incredibly gross.
Well, yeah. I don't even know if I've totally thought about that because even the gross stuff is drawn really beautifully. And the goo is like they just know how to like follow organic forms correctly, and it doesn't even bother me.
Oh yeah, I just thought it's funny. Like the stink demon, they really make you feel like this thing is gross as hell.
Yes.
And the dragon, when he's spraying blood everywhere and it's just splattering around, like there's so much gross stuff alongside all this other stuff that's so beautiful and warm and nice. It's funny, and I think it adds even more to the depth of just every aspect of this movie. So was there anything else you wanted to say about the art?
Um, I'll say that the art is interesting in a way that it's mixed media, so you can tell that they're using like watercolor for the
Oh
clouds
yeah.
and acrylic possibly or gouache for certain landscape elements, and that's just something I appreciate as being a mixed media artist. I like seeing that.
Yeah, it is very striking, and something I actually did want to hit on when talking about the 3D hybrid stuff. There there is like a depth to the characters. Like there's a part where the what's her name, the witch,
Yababa.
Yababa, where Yababa is like circling a character and talking to them, and you can just feel like the weight and the presence of this character that looks like such an awkward caricature because she's basically just a giant head.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see it in that way, you can see like the depth, and it feels like it's actually taking up space, 3D space in the room, and I thought that was really striking. Okay.
A cat just walking across the table.
All right, so why don't we move on to the story? So I already mentioned that Miyazaki doesn't really write scripts. He kind of storyboards as he goes. And he was preparing to retire after Princess Mononoke. And apparently he had some kind of thing in his life. I think he met, like, it was a friend's 10-year-old daughter. And there was something that inspired him to make a movie that was geared specifically to young girls. Which I guess ties into why this might have been really influential for you, because you were like the appropriate age. You said you were like 12.
Yeah, I was either 11 or 12, so yeah.
Yeah, and maybe why me as a 16-year-old boy I wasn't quite feeling it at the time,
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't prepared for that. But I can definitely appreciate that now, and it's something that, especially at the time, you just didn't see as much of.
Yeah. I mean, being a young girl in America, you usually see boys doing all of the heroic things
Yeah.
on TV. Of course, I will say in the 90s, that's where things started to really take a turn.
Sure.
Seemed like they were trying to incorporate more strong female leads.
Yeah, and I think it stood out to me that in the beginning of the movie, she's like very scared and very skittish, and like afraid to explore. And by the end, I mean,
She's finding herself.
Absolutely.
She finds her independence.
It's very much about that. And you can see the progression, as she gets bolder and braver and stands up for herself more over the course of the movie. I thought that was just super well done without like shoving it down your throat.
Yeah. I don't even think it's something I understood when I was a kid watching it. I think I just fell in love with the mood of it.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting that,
He has the zoomies.
What is he playing with in there? So another thing that was really interesting to me about this movie is Miyazaki. It seems that he really cares deeply about the environment, and he has these themes in a lot of his movies that deal with, the way humans are kind of destroying the planet. You could see it, for me at least, the strongest one early on was Nausicaa, which was very much about that. And then, he made Princess Mononoke because he felt like he didn't fully explore those themes in Nausicaa. So he made Princess Mononoke, which is very similar thematically. And it just allowed him to explore that stuff more. But even here in Spirited Away, with the stink demon that wound up being like this river spirit that was full of all this trash. And I read that he had an experience when he was younger where he helped to like clean out a river and pulled a bike out. So it seems like that was something he was aware of and was important to him from a pretty young age. and it finds its way into a lot of his movies. I'm sure it's present in more than just these two. Um, but we'd probably notice that if we explored his catalog some more.
Yeah, I think if like we seriously watched some of these Ghibli films, I mean, I think I've only really ever watched them just purely entertainment, not studying them. So that would be a different thing to maybe deep dive into.
Yeah, I guess I should sum up the story real quick. We're kind of getting really far ahead of it. But the movie is basically about this young girl named Chihiro. Is that correct?
Chihiro? Yeah.
Chihiro, who she's moving with her parents. Was it like her dad gets a new job or something? Is that
It's something like that. Like she's
Yeah, she doesn't seem happy about it.
no, you can tell that she doesn't want to move. She, is going to miss all her friends.
Yeah.
She has a gift from her classmates, I'm pretty sure, or
That's right.
close friends. And it's a little bouquet of flowers with a card.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen almost any artist that I follow has done some sort of rendition of that scene. I've done a rendition of that scene.
Oh, yeah.
I think even, and I wanted to talk about this more later, but just the composition and how every scene is handled like a painting, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but basically they wind up accidentally stumbling on this weird little abandoned town, which turns out to be like in the spirit realm. Like they go through a tunnel and discover it. And this seems to be a kind of hub for spirits to come and like eat and enjoy the bathhouse and everything. And it's run by this witch, Yababa, was that her name?
Mm-hmm.
This powerful witch who seems to run this place and really covets money and getting rich.
Yeah. I will say in this scene when the parents pull over to go into this weird tunnel and everything, and she is so anxious, I related to that as a kid so much.
Yeah.
I was like, why are they making her go through this? Like,
Yeah.
she clearly doesn't want to do it. And as a kid, it like gave me anxiety. Like, oh, just stay in the car.
I think that was the most striking thing, though, when you see where her character winds up. Like seeing her in the beginning, how anxious and scared she is. But by the end, she's ready to just run straight into danger. Mm-hmm. But one of the things in this bathhouse, it seems like there's some kind of magical contract that basically says as long as you are working, you are kind of protected. So the early movie is all about her finding this out and trying to find a job so that she can exist here as a human without being targeted, I guess, by anyone. So that's kind of the gist of the movie, is her trying to work at this bathhouse, getting to know these characters and get accepted. And it is funny when you think about it, because everyone looks down on her because she's a human. And it's because you have all these other characters who can like fly and are super strong. And then there's just this little human girl who can't really do anything.
Yeah, they all see her as like a burden.
Yeah.
Like, oh God, this human's not gonna be able to do any of these things that we need to get done.
Yeah. And it is something about her character that I think I get very drawn to these kind of characters, which you're going to be able to see the relationship between this and like Luffy in One Piece. I like characters who are just so kind-hearted and genuine that maybe they're not the most capable, they're not like super exceptional, but they win people over just by being themselves.
That, and they also just look out for the other's best interest.
Yeah, they're just endlessly kind,
and I think
and selfless.
Like Kamaji and Lin are very good examples of this. Of course, Haku too.
Yeah,
because Haku saves her. But when we like meet Kamaji and Lin pops in, he's like, oh, this is my granddaughter. Like, it's on the spot to protect her.
Oh, yes.
It's like, oh, yeah, this is my granddaughter. She needs a job.
Yeah, that's the guy running the, like, bellows underneath.
With
very
all the
iconic.
Suits. Yeah, the suit
looking.
sprites, which is also very iconic.
Yeah. So Haku is working for Yubaba because he wants to learn magic from her, but you find out she's actually controlling him. Like, she's put, like, a curse on him. And that seems to be a through line, that everything with the contracts and everything that she makes for employees seem to be very one-sided. Yes. And very difficult to break, including the one for Chihiro, when she takes their names, that's part of it. She takes the names of everyone who signs the contract, and they say that that's part of how you break the contract is you have to remember your original name.
Right, and they give you a new name.
Yeah, hers is Sen, which is apparently a play on words in Japanese, which actually that's something I wanted to get into is the translation. So I remember, like I said, I was a huge fan of Princess Mononoke, and something that kind of bugged me is when the movie came over to America and Disney did the release. The plus side to that is when you look at like the English dub for Princess Mononoke and even for Spirited Away, there's a lot of celebrity voice actors, and Disney gives it that kind of attention that they give to all their movies. So the dubs are actually really solid. However, the flip side to that is the person who is in charge of the translation, they made a big point to make the translation, number one, fit, the mouth flaps and everything, which meant they had to change the script a bit.
Yeah.
That's what they call it.
Yeah, it's just funny.
It is funny. But the other part of it is they wind up stripping a lot of the cultural stuff from the movie to make it more accessible. And this always bothered me ever since Princess Mononoke, because in the Japanese version, there is a lot of stuff that's tied deeply with Japanese culture. And they kind of strip that stuff down and simplify it in a way that feels like they kind of don't trust the American audience to just get it. Because I remember there were certain things like the demons in Princess Mononoke that like possessed the animal spirits. There was a specific term for them. And meanwhile, in the American dub, they're just like called demons. It's like, and there's something about that always bugged me, that felt like when it's so steeped in the culture and the mythology and you strip that out, you're taking something away from the movie. So it's like, I understand why they do it, but I've never liked that.
I don't understand why they do it. I think more people are smart enough to figure it out than I think they would like to lead on.
No, I agree. But I think, especially back then, they were just trying to make it as accessible as possible. And I think there are a lot of people, especially like, listen, don't want to, don't take this the wrong way, but maybe some of the Disney audience, in the mainstream, doesn't really care about that stuff and would kind of get lost.
Like Disney adults?
We don't need to go there. We don't need to target anybody here.
No, we love our Disney adults.
Everybody love what you love.
Yes.
But I can kind of get it, but it still is, it's unfortunate, and it means that as well done as the dubs are and as watchable as they are, I still think the Japanese version is going to be vastly superior, especially in this instance, just because you're missing something in that translation. And that issue, it seems like when they did the translation for Spirited Away, they approached it the same way. So the same thing happens. One of the things I did want to hit on that I saw, so you remember how she gets that little like medicine ball when she saves that one river spirit?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, very cool scene with the stink demon rolls up and everyone's freaking out, and they send her in because she's this little human. They're like, you can take care of it, because it's like the ultimate dirty job, to lead the stinky demon into the bath.
Yeah, I think it's also about, it's a consistent theme in the movie that she is just nice to everyone, basically. Oh, yeah. She gives everybody a fair chance. And I think in this scene in particular, it shows how being kind can pay off very greatly. Yeah,
but she winds up leading it into the bath and manages to clean it and find, the little handle sticking out, which looks like it's like stabbed with something, until you realize it's a bicycle handle and it's full of all this trash.
Yeah, she calls it a thorn. She's like, there's a thorn.
Yeah. But, she goes through all this and winds up cleansing it and saving this river spirit, which gets her all these accolades. Because after that, everyone's like, oh, like, I guess you're not so helpless after all. And that kind of helps her to prove herself in the bathhouse. But what I was reading, she gets this weird little green ball that's like medicine. So apparently that thing is called an emetic dumpling, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But the idea of this thing is it's supposed to induce vomiting. So it's like if you eat poison or something, and that's why whenever she gives it to people, they wind up vomiting out like this evil spirit energy.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that.
That's one of those cultural things that like the movie's chock full of, you know. And in fact, this might have been one of the things that was mentioned that like the younger people working on it weren't familiar with. I know one of the ones that stood out to me is that when they were animating Haku in his dragon form, he was using as a reference eels and the way they swim. Yeah. And what he said to them when he's getting attacked and like wriggling around, he specifically pointed to like at the fish market when they're killing the eels and the way they wriggle. And he said that his younger people were just like, what are you talking about? Like had no idea about that reference. And he was like, we're doomed.
That's interesting. I had no idea that he used the eel as a reference, but that makes sense now for sure.
Definitely.
I mean, have you ever seen an eel in real life?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
look just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the first big scene. Then we have the No Face, which has always been like this iconic, really cool character. And what I liked about it is it's this weird evil spirit that she lets in, and it seems to be like some kind of greed demon.
Yeah.
That, you know, gives you whatever your heart desires.
I like to say it's a fuckboy demon.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
I mean, if you think about it, she like refuses his advances and then goes insane.
Yeah, I mean,
starts eating people.
Well, that's the interesting thing about it is that it seems like whenever he gives stuff to people and they take it, it gives him strength, you know, and makes him bigger. But every time that he presents stuff to her, she's like, I don't need that. Like, I don't want that, you know, and he slowly gets more and more frustrated because he can't win her over with these gifts. And it shows
the
like
ultimate way to beat a narcissist.
Sure. That's one way to look at it. But it is interesting that the way she defeats it is through that kind heart that she has no interest in these kind of worldly things. And it gets so frustrated. And she gives him that medicine, that emetic dumpling, which makes him start vomiting out all this evil energy he's been accumulating. And then he goes right back to just being this little nice boy.
You kept laughing every time. But while we're on No Face, you showed me a silly concept drawing. So I want you to see. Have you ever seen the concept drawing?
No, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. So
you have this massive Spirited Away art book.
Yes, that you got me as a gift.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
So I'll post a picture of this on the socials. But you can see he looks like a very little magical man.
Yeah, that's really cool looking.
It's very different. It's even if it would have ended up like this in the film, I would have not been mad at all.
Yeah, it looks cool.
But I just wanted to show you that.
I will say that reminds me, I was reading that his design was inspired by silkworms, which are another thing that's like really big in Japan. And the silkworms, they have this like fake face on the top of them, I guess to fool like predators. And there's a mouth underneath it. So you can see like how that plays into the design.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah. And then I guess the final big scene deals with Chihiro. She winds up seeking out Yababa's sister. What was her name?
Zeniba,
who's like her twin sister. It's kind of like the like in Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the East and the West. It feels like that. And she's being presented, Zeniba is being presented as this like evil sister.
When in reality, she's this cool aunt, almost like this cool aunt vibe.
But she seeks her out because this is when, what's the dragon guy's name? Haku. This is when Haku, he's being attacked, and this is when you get this crazy violent scene where the blood's splattering everywhere. He's being attacked by these little paper sprites. And when she feeds him the emetic dumpling, he vomits out this seal, which has a little curse on it that she stomps out. And she gets the wrong idea that she thinks Zeniba is trying to kill him. But when she goes out there, her whole reason for going out there is to try and like basically get her to like leave him alone, which again, like that's her selfless nature.
I know. I mean, here she is. She's stuck in this world. She can't find her
Hmm.
parents. Well, I mean, she knows where they are, but they're pigs.
Yeah.
And all she's really concerned about is now helping her new friend.
Yeah. And Haku did a lot to help her, and
Oh,
you can
yes.
see she appreciates that and wants to return the favor.
Yeah, they definitely establish that there's some sort of past connection that they've had, but they're not specific on what it is.
Right. Yeah. We'll get to that with the ending. Um, but she travels out there, and this is what I'm talking about, where when I was watching it, it kind of was losing me when they left the bathhouse, like originally. But watching it now, yes, I like where the story goes, and
Well, when they're on that train, not to interrupt you,
yeah,
but so the train scene was always very relaxing for me. It was like a slice of life scene.
yeah, it's a different kind of vibe.
And I think this is now looking back on this and watching it again, I think is a big inspiration for like lo-fi channels.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And I love seeing that recreated over and over. Like I will put on a lo-fi channel just because it has good artwork.
Yeah,
And it's lo-fi. I don't know if I can say for lo-fi girl, but I see this style, like this very simple, cozy style being used in like lo-fi girl. And it's why I love lo-fi girl so much.
totally.
Yeah.
And I liked all the like little shadowy figures that are on the train and everything. Like, it has a very distinct vibe to it. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a way of like adding life to the scene without it being too distracting.
Yeah.
So I think it was very beautifully done, just like everything in this movie.
Yeah. And so yeah, at the end of the movie, she discovers that Zeniba is actually a good witch and was trying to help him to get out of this curse that was allowing Yababa to control him. And
Yeah, Chihiro tells her like what she found. She's like, I found this like little bug, and then I
yeah.
squished it. And she's like, you squished it, and
Yeah.
just busts out laughing. And I
Yeah,
find that
definitely.
so silly.
the nice aunt energy there,
Yeah.
nice eclectic, or eccentric aunt energy. But yeah, and at the end of the movie, she discovers Haku's real name, which helps him to free himself from her magic.
Right, because she was drowning in a river when she was a child, and
Right.
he was the river that like flowed the water to save her, and that's
Yes.
how she remembered her connection.
Yeah, really taking all these like I said, these kind of Japanese folklore mythology concepts and bringing them to life. That he's literally a river spirit that is personified as like this dragon.
Yeah, and also I know that like, and this was something I started thinking in the beginning of the film because you were like, "Oh, did you have a crush on Haku when you were a little girl?" I responded like, "Well, no, I always viewed them as platonic friends."
Yeah.
And I think this is a point in the movie where I'm not sure what the original intention is if it is to be like soulmate romantic love or a platonic love, because
Yeah.
you hear like Kamaji sees them in that herb house where he works, and he tells Lynn, "Oh, it's love. They're in love." And I
Yeah.
think that's still, I don't, he probably doesn't say they're in love. He says it's love.
Yeah.
And
Can go either way, I think.
I really think it could go either way, and either way doesn't upset me. But I do like to view it as like a deep platonic love for a friend.
Well, I like that it can go either way. I think
Yeah.
it's like it's very innocent, very heartfelt, and it's in keeping with that age, because at that age you might not fully understand the difference between one and the other. So I thought that was definitely really nicely handled. And I guess the movie ends with Chihiro breaking her spell, her contract herself, because she's able to remember her name from that card that her classmates gave her. And the final test is that, her parents, who greedily just dug into that Miyazaki food.
Which, if I can just stop on this for a second,
Yeah.
the anxiety I felt for Chihiro, like when her parents were like eating that food. When I
Yeah.
was a kid, I was like, oh my God, they can't do that. That's you. It made
Yeah.
me feel like so anxious. Like, oh God, you're just standing there and they're eating all this food.
Yeah. But they get turned into pigs because they're eating all this food that they weren't supposed to, which,
Which is
hey,
so silly and so scary.
also can't blame them because that food looked good as hell.
I mean, it does. The
Yeah.
food does look good.
But basically, the witch, she brings the pigs out and says that she has to identify which ones are her parents. And they all look identical. And it's meant to be a kind of gotcha because she says you only have one chance. And if you get it wrong, that's that. But she's able to see through it and say that, well, none of these are my parents. And that causes her contract to burn up and freeze her. And everybody celebrates.
Yeah, everybody
Yay.
cheers.
Everyone's happy for her because she's won everybody over at that point.
Yeah.
She's not just a stupid little human. So yeah, movie definitely holds up. I think everything from the animation, the story, it all holds up really well, in my opinion.
I think the animation itself still looks
It's timeless.
it looks so beautiful and it still looks ahead of its time. And it's been over 20 years.
Yeah, 2001.
That's crazy.
And I think a lot of it does come back to what I was saying. I've always felt like, so something I know I say to you a lot is a quote that's from Ira Glass at This American Life, which I just realized recently because I'd been saying this quote for a long time without remembering it. But it's the idea that if you have good tastes, it's normal for you to feel disappointed by something that you create. It shows that, if you aren't satisfied with something that you've created, it's because you have good taste and you know that what you want the final product to look like is so much better than this, and it can inspire you to just keep hammering at it, make it better. Obviously, that's not the quote. I can't remember the exact quote, but that's the idea. And I feel like Miyazaki is the type of person that he's going to look at everything from this perspective where he has very high expectations, very good tastes, obviously, and he's not going to let something go if it's not fully meeting his expectations. And so like the implementation of the 3D art alongside the 2D is an example that he just kept working at it until it all mixed together and looked seamless. And that's part of why it holds up. Because a lot of times nowadays you see movies that try to mess with 3D animation and hybrid stuff, and it looks kind of cheap.
It looks obvious. I think that's
Yeah.
the issue, is that when you're using a tool and the tool is obviously seen, it kind of takes away from it.
Yeah, and even some of the better stuff like Chainsaw Man, I like the style of the Chainsaw Man anime.
I do too.
But even that, I think it's not 100% there.
It's
you
not
know?
Studio Ghibli level. It's good, but it's not Studio Ghibli level.
Yes, but it shows, if back in 2001, he was able to blend it so seamlessly. I think it really is a testament, like I said, to
Good taste.
to taste, to Miyazaki and his eye for this stuff and his unwillingness to just accept like, all right, it's good enough. We're almost there. Like he really hammered it until it was 100% Studio Ghibli quality. And that attention, it just shows in every aspect of this movie.
Yeah, I don't think I can go like a week on the internet without seeing like a Studio Ghibli GIF somewhere, using it for something, because it's just so iconic.
Yeah. I think that'll do it for this side piece episode. I do think we're going to have to hit on Princess Mononoke at some point, because that, like I said, that is still top 3 favorite, not favorite anime, favorite movies for me. I love that movie.
Yeah, and you actually introduced me to Princess Mononoke. I had not seen it at the time.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That was not as like mainstream as Spirited Away, for sure. But
yeah, we all know you're an underground super weeb.
okay. All right, we don't need to go there. Now, if I was super underground, I'd be like, Nausicaa is the one.
But
I do love
Nausicaa is
Nausicaa
really
too.
good.
Yeah. All right, so that was the side piece on Straw Hat Social Club. Not sure what number this is because I don't know what order we're going to post them. These are kind of,
It'll probably just be labeled like Spirited Away or something. I don't know. We'll
yeah,
figure it out.
we're kind of just docking these so we can put them in there if we don't have an episode for the week. I think that's going to be the idea, but whatever. Why don't you plug the socials?
So we're Straw Hat Social Club everywhere. So YouTube, Instagram, Tumblr, TikTok, and you can also email us at strawhatsocialclub@gmail.com.
Yeah, and in keeping with what we're doing right now with Side Piece, if you want to email us any anime movies, has to be movies, not shows, because that's easier for us to just watch and cover. But any anime movies from, when you were younger, when you were first getting into anime.
Yes, and tell us stories about it. I want to hear
yeah.
how you were inspired by anime or something like really got you into it, like tell us about it.
Yeah, if we actually can get some submissions like that, we'll watch them and talk about them, and we'll read, whatever you send us. Mm-hmm. So like and subscribe, rate us on iTunes, whatever. And I think that'll do it. Yep. And so I'm Todd.
I'm Becca.
And this was Straw Hat Social Club. See you later.